Welcome to the 20verse podcast. I'm the host, Valeria. Join me while I storytell about my life to hopefully help you through yours. Through my journey, I talk about healing, growing, and mindset. Thank you so much for listening. Let's get into today's episode. Before we hop right into today's episode, I wanted to have a trigger warning in front of it. We talk a lot about body image, weight issues. We use a lot of explicit words. We talk about lived experiences, and I want you to feel comfortable when you are listening to this. So I wanted to let you know that we do speak very openly and honestly and in terms that we've heard multiple times, and really try to dissect that. So if that's an issue for you, I wanted to let you know beforehand. Otherwise, it's an amazing episode, and let's get started. Hi, and welcome back to the 20verse podcast. I'm super excited for today's episode because we are going to be talking about body image. Body image is something that is unique to so many people because everyone has different bodies, of course. So I wanted to have multiple perspectives on this topic. So I've invited my newfound friend, Fiji, and she hosts an amazing Instagram account.
Yeah, so The Naked is what it's called, and it's all about sort of empowering, the human body and mind. I specifically focus on females and their stories in individuality and femininity, sexuality, all those topics. And so it's just photographs and videos and just a whole creative Instagram account, essentially.
Yeah, so the creativity is so important, and I thought there's no one better to talk about this, and it's that's your whole topic, and I love it. So why body image? So I think it's something I haven't spoken about on my podcast before, but it's something that as we're growing up we experience all the freaking time. So kind of why it's important to me is because I was an athlete growing up. I played basketball for multiple years. I was on multiple teams and elite teams, and I think that there's a certain standard once it comes to, if you're an athlete, you must look a certain way, you must exercise a certain way, and there's just this whole different mentality that comes with that. And you had a similar experience.
Yeah, especially in sports. And even because I started dance when I was younger, and it started right from then, when you're in ballet or when you're in jazz, and then, you go to volleyball and all that, they all have a specific image they want you to sort of fit into. And it can be a very exclusionary, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's an image that you kind of feel like you have to uphold. So what image do you think that you felt you needed to uphold?
I felt like I needed to be just a skinny, I think that's the most typical thing because that's what you see a lot, especially in media too. But you just needed to be skinny and tiny, and you needed to be delicate almost, in how women were perceived. It wasn't about your strength. It wasn't about your mental. It wasn't about any of that. It was just you needed to be tiny, and you needed to have the sexual characteristics that men would find desirable, and that was it.
Yeah. And is that something that you had to actively try to combat, or
Yeah, I would say it was a big challenge because through, I feel like junior high is sort of in your most vulnerable years in that, because you're starting to develop, you're starting to figure some things out that you haven't been experienced before. And I think with that, it was just a big gray area because you're not taught it in school. You only ever pick up what other people are teaching you, right? So whether it be your family members and the people, your friends around you, but they also weren't taught. So it's just this big circle of people not really knowing what they're doing. And it's a lot easier just to resort in what, you see on TV or what you see in magazines at the grocery store or whatever it is. My earliest memory with it was literally going to, I was at a superstore or whatever with my mom, and I remember seeing the magazines with all the skinny ass women on it, right? And that's immediately what I was oh, I don't look like that. I was 12, 13, and of course I'm not going to look like that. Also, that isn't the way that I need to look. Like my body is good enough the way that it is. So it's a very difficult cycle, I think.
Yeah, and like on the topic of the media, like it's just so prominent, and like I literally study like the body, like that's my degree, and I feel like it's been really eye-opening to realize that media, all it does is just continuously perpetuate gender norms and perpetuate the way that a woman should look. And a lot of the time, even like with the family thing, like I'm a Latina girl, and once you think of like a Latina girl, like an image pops into your head, and it's not exactly fully how I grew up. Like I didn't look like that when I was like younger, and it's like I don't know about you, but I see like a big boobed, small waist, big ass like
Yo.
girl with like long silky hair, or like something like, because it's so like I think there's like a fetish behind it of like there's a whole fucking section in porn about Latinas. So like it's just so much to like wrap my head around, especially when I was like younger, and being like with a mom that like she was young, so she always looked like really good. And I think that even for that, like I felt that she was judged by the other moms. I feel like it's a generational thing between women that hasn't been healed, because we're all expected to look a certain way. Therefore we have it so ingrained in our heads that that if a woman, it's kind of like a weird situation, because if a woman does look like that, then other women judge her, because it's like, oh, she's just trying too hard, she's trying too hard for the men, what is she doing, trying to entice them? But then if they don't look like that, they're like, oh my god, look at her, so ugly, how could she get a husband?
Yeah, it's literally, instead of appreciating each other's beauty, it's just comparison the whole way. Because even in my family too, it's like my mom's side has a lot of native in it, right? So they all look different. Like even I was talking to my mom about it the other day, and she was sort of saying like one of her friends is blue eye, blonde hair, like very like typical in her age category, at least. Like that's what was always depicted as beautiful. You know what I'm saying? And she has like a bit of darker skin, like darker features, darker hair, darker, all of that. And she was saying like they're both trying to date right now, and she was saying how her other friend with the blue eyes, blonde hair was getting so much more attention, like sexually though. It doesn't mean it was like genuine connection, but it was just like she was being so sexually analyzed, and like just it's very, very different, I would say, in how like women go about their lives, because it's just comparison. You know what I mean? Like I could see my mom comparing herself because her features are different to this woman because of what media has portrayed to her. That is beautiful. And that's what the same thing with like men. A lot of men will fetishize certain races or certain women because of what either media has depicted or porn has depicted. Like there's so many different variables that play into a part of why people are the way they are in that regard.
Yeah, and like there's this idea of scarcity that's perpetually just like in our culture of there's not enough room for women, therefore you better look like the most elite woman or you will not be looked at, you will not be, and you'll like face so much. Like I know that like us having like cultural backgrounds that aren't like Canadian fully, like there's a lot that is like just deeply like, and they're not afraid to say it. Like my aunties, like every single time I'd go to Ecuador or something, they will tell me if I've gained weight.
Instantly.
The moment.
Yeah.
All the time. So it's like in Spanish we have a way of like nicknames all the time, but the nicknames are based on how you look. So there's for girls, there's a lot of the time you're either called gorda or flaca, but it's like a nurturing way that people say gorda, which is fat, and then skinny, which is flaca. And I've never been flaca. I've always been gorda. But it's like a way of, it's like an endearing, like loving way, but like it's still very prominent in my mind. Like, okay, I'm not the flaca girl. And then if they try to do that because they know I feel bad when I'm 10 years old or something, it's like, well, you're not being genuine, right? And then it's like, why do you put so much of my value into the way that I look.
That's literally like, I know even my sister, my aunties, big family, right? Lots of aunties, lots of just lots of aunties. And as soon as they see us, even like they haven't seen us for a while, they see us, they're like, oh, they mentioned something about your weight. They mentioned something about your like whatever way that you're looking, there's something wrong with it. There's something to pick apart, you know, like you can never please them, but why does that matter? Like my weight shouldn't be your first thing that you think of or that you talk about when you first see me again. Like that's not the connection that we should have. And there's so much emphasis put on the way that like we should be for other people and how other people want to perceive us, which doesn't like, that's so degrading because it's like, then I feel like I have to like customize myself for everyone else, like appearance wise. Like there was such a long period of my life where I was like bleaching my hair and I was like, you know, trying to act a certain way and be a certain way for other people because I was like, this is what is going to appeal to them. Like I was like, oh, if I just go back to like who I know that I am, who is like, I'm more of a creative person, right? I'm more like in tune spiritually or like mentally and stuff. And that's what I value. But I was putting so much emphasis on how I looked for these people. And it wasn't even how I wanted to look either. Like how I knew I like what fit me. It was for these other people. And it was just so degrading. And I lost touch with all those other values that I had that mattered to me, you know, like it just completely took away from who I knew I was meant to be.
Because like we're constantly, I think it's like a thing that we're consciously fighting, but we're consciously in. Like I to this day, like it's so I moved out of my house for the summer. So I moved to a whole nother province. And in that, I really did, I don't even know why this concept's a thing, but that freshman 15, like you gain like 15 pounds when you move out for the first time. Like it was me to like the T. Like, and first of all, that was so difficult for me because like I had always looked a certain way. I was in basketball. I literally didn't have any other choice but to be doing cardio all the time. Therefore, I wasn't ever like super, like my mom wouldn't consider me like big, right? Yeah. Like I think that was, and it was like I was big enough to be accepted, which is crazy because if you look at me in my past pictures, I'm not fucking big, but like I had this, or like the idea of like of I'm obese or something. Like I don't know, like it's just like a perpetual of no, I'm fat. But like,
and fat as like a bad thing too.
That's what I'm saying.
Like it was instantly like that was such a negative thing. Like as soon as you notice yourself gaining weight, or as soon as you notice yourself like with just something to do with weight, like if it was gaining, I immediately associated it with being bad, being unhealthy, which is so far from the reality of what that is. And the stigma that is around like gaining weight, I still struggle with it. Like I'm still like, oh, if I'm a bit bigger, like, or if I gain some weight, especially through quarantine, like obviously the gyms are closed, whatever activity you're doing is closed, right? All that matters is that you're healthy. All that matters is that you're taking care of yourself and you're trying to be the best that you can be. And the fact that like we put so much stigma around everything else in regards to like our appearance, it's just so deep for what, like it makes no sense. If you actually rationally look at it, it makes no sense.
Yeah. And it's crazy because like I know that I'm continuously working on it. Like even like the past thing that I just said, like you could see me struggling to find the words because I'm trying to reframe the way that I look at things. And I think like that's like the very honest truth of just being like, okay, so what am I doing just to fit an ideal standard of somebody else? And what am I doing so that I feel good? Like I think that balance has been like a big learning process for me because once I came back like I really did gain like 10 to 15 pounds. That was the first thing I could see every single morning, and it was just like the degrading talks that I would have with myself, and I would just like why am I trying to make myself feel worse? Why am I grabbing at my fat? Like why am I like looking in the mirror, like being so sad, getting upset about it? Like it was like such like a deep rooted fear, I think, in some ways, that if I was looking like that, like I'm not worthy of something. Like if like I didn't even realize that it was because it wasn't conscious, but a lot of the time I think I was relating my value on external circumstances.
Mhm.
If I looked skinnier, therefore I am more deserving of posting a picture of me in a crop top. Like, it's like little things like that that just add up.
Yeah, because it literally, that's exactly what it is. It's the little things. Because it's like, as soon as I notice myself, because even through the past year, like I gained weight and then I like tried to lose it. And then it was just like this big fluctuation. But when I felt like I had, or when I knew I gained weight, it was like, oh, I'm not as desirable almost. You know what I mean? Like, I'm at the point in my life now where I've had enough experience that I know like men's association with beauty, or even just like the social standards of beauty, does not associate with me like that. Like that, I shouldn't have to focus on that to represent myself. You know what I mean? Like, I can be who I am and I'm beautiful that way. Like, as it's not comparable. You know what I'm saying? Everybody has it differently. But when I gained weight, it was almost automatically I fell back into that same cycle of like, oh well, now I'm not worth enough, now I'm not desirable. Like, and it just is almost ingrained in my mind that I need to be desirable for other people. You know what I mean? Like, I'm in a healthy relationship. I've been working on myself so much. You know, I've been in the place where I'm actually trying to make improvement. But it was so easy for me to be like, oh, well, now I'm not worth anything. You know, like, not, like, I just felt like I wasn't worth it. Because I was like, I noticed all these changes in my body. But why did I have such a negative perspective on it? You know what I mean? Like, I looked at it like it was the worst, like such a bad thing. Like, it had such an impact on me mentally. And that's just so crazy to look at and say, like, 10 pounds made me feel that way. Like, and the way that you said it was subconscious, wow, there's no way that I would have like recognized it, because I noticed myself started, like, I was more uncomfortable in the clothes I was wearing. I was more uncomfortable walking around. Like, I was a little more self-conscious, you know, and I put so much value on that. And it wasn't until I was like, hey, why am I feeling this bad? Like, I shouldn't be. I've been doing so much work. And then when I actually looked, like, introspective, right, I was like, oh, oh shit. Like,
Yeah,
it's so heavy.
like it's just like, it really is like super heavy, and it really does take like a certain level of willingness to get uncomfortable with yourself, to be like, okay, these are the words that I'm saying to myself right now. Why am I saying them to myself? And then just going down that like rabbit hole, I guess, with yourself. And then if you find out at the end that it was because of instances in your childhood that you were put into programs, you were put into, like, if there's like conscious things, like I've been hearing since I was, I think, 7, 8, 9, from my, like, it's also from like a cultural standpoint as well, because it's not like they mean bad, but it's just so like what people say in their heads that just come out to children. Because like my dad would be like, oh, you're getting big, like, let's not eat that much. Or my mom would be like, listen, I want you, like, I want you to be like aware of this, right? Like, it's just those little comments that are just so ingrained in our parents. And like, it's not because they don't love us, it's not because, but it's just because like they grew up that way and they don't see any other thing, and they know the discrimination that quote unquote fat big people get. So they're like, don't get into that place. Or like, one thing that I now have to just consciously be is like, there's a lot of machismo around like the Latino culture. There's a lot of men that think that they can police women's bodies. Like, we are not even gonna get into the politics of that shit, but it's just so like, there's like an ownership that people think they have of like women, or of like of teenage girls. Like,
oh my god,
it's just like constantly advertising to little like girls just really just trying to like grow up, and there's enough struggles going on in the world, and then you are advertising these like Weight Watchers for teens, or like this, like these things that are like, oh yeah, like, and I understand there's a point that it gets like very unhealthy, but a lot of it isn't even that. It's a lot of it is just trying to make you look like a pencil. And we know that like not everyone, if you don't feel like you want to be like that, or because we're talking about like, because we're both girls that would be considered quote unquote big, right? Like, we're not like we're not the twigs.
We're not tiny.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Like, we're just not tiny.
Exactly. We're just not tiny. But then like people that have been called a twig, they just want to be bigger. So it's like
it's a battle.
It's a battle. It's like you're never enough in a way. Like I didn't mean twig in like a derogatory way. I just like that's what came to my mind because I've heard people refer to you as like to people that are like skinny as that. Anyways, I want to clarify that. But no, it's always like a constant, like you're never enough. Like there's always something you can change to be better.
Mm-hmm. Every single thing. Like even you look at another girl, right? It's like, oh, if I had that, I feel like I'd be more beautiful. Or if I had her aspect of this, like I feel like I'd be more beautiful. And that's not the reality of it. Like what I had to learn is just that, again, beauty is not comparable. You know what I mean? It's just like everybody's individual beauty has its own significance to it, and that doesn't take away from your own. Like that's one thing that I struggled with so much is I would compare myself all the time because I just thought I needed to, like I just thought my body wasn't good enough. Like I just thought what I looked like was not good enough. And the fact that that's like engraved in such a young age, like I can remember my auntie saying stuff about like my sister and I's body when we were like 7, 6. And it's just like how, like I know they didn't mean anything by it, right? Again, just how they grew up. But how disgusting is that? You know, like that I should be focusing on what my body looks like when I'm just a child and I'm trying to grow up. Like that's so far from the reality of what it should be. And I think a lot of it comes down to understanding what, like, I guess it really comes down to consumerism too. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, they're trying to sell you something, like you said, like Weight Watchers for teens, or like all these diets, or like this is what you need to eat to be skinny. Or even if you look at stuff on TikTok now, like you know how you go on Instagram and they have like TikToks on Instagram. When you like swipe on the slides, it always comes down to like this teenage girl, like probably like 15, 16, maybe even younger, like dancing to this song and saying like, oh, you want to be skinny, you want a big butt, you want like like flat abs and stuff. And it's like, what, like just to sell this product to them. And that's just in my eyes, that's so dirty because you're just telling people like, oh, if you don't have this type of stuff, then you're not as good as me, or like you're not good, you're not taking care of yourself. Like there's just so much stigma still. And even though it is being deconstructed better now, there is still so much stigma about like how we're meant to look. You know,
and it's like just like an individual, like families and in the way that like we've grown up, because like truly we can't blame ourselves for thinking like this. Like even like things that I've said today, they're just like, they're not going to resonate with some people and they're going to resonate with other people because of the way that like I grew up. And maybe I'm not going to be, because I know I'm not going to be right the 100% of the time. I know I'm not going to be able to speak to everybody 100% of the time. And so it's always like an ongoing learning process because everybody's going to have a different experience with it because it's like so ongoing. And like I catch myself now, like I see Saweetie posting like an ab pic and I'm like, damn, like I remember when I had abs, but like I was 16.
Yeah.
Like how like stupid is it that like I was a baby, like I was a child. And sure, that was like not that long ago, but like the fact that I'm being held by myself, like I'm holding myself to a standard of me when I was a full-time athlete, where that was like my priority. And now I'm just really trying to live a balanced life that doesn't prioritize that because I know in my heart I don't want to do that anymore. It's just like, it's just constantly like in my mind, and I need to consistently remind myself it's all good. Like I've practiced recently. There's this great podcast with Brené Brown and Sonia Renee Taylor. And they talk about how your body is not an apology. And I never heard that before.
I got chills.
I know, right?
I got chills.
It's like you always have to like, and it comes out in like little things that you say, like maybe like, oh, I don't fit that, I'm sorry. Or like if you say to your boyfriend, oh, like look at these rolls, like as in like you're trying to like seek validation for them. Like it's not an apology. You don't have to apologize for the way that you look because you are enough in the way that you show up in the world.
Yeah. And I think another big thing is like, if you look, like you said about the different experiences, like I'm never going to know what it feels like to be skinny, you know, like skinny, you know what I mean? Like that was never me. Even during like when I was doing sports full time and stuff, it was never something like the girls on my team compared to me, like I was a lot bigger in my eyes, and I wasn't even that big. Like obviously when you're doing sports full time, you're like I was more in shape than I probably am now, but it was just like I would always think that I'm so much bigger than the other girls, and it would be like a conscious thing in my head. Like I would be consistently saying like, oh, these girls are so like they're so much more beautiful, they're so much more because of this. But now like I guess just with the how culture has sort of played out too, it's like because I am a little bit bigger or I have like a little more defined like sexual characteristics, it's like now I'm overly sexualized in some ways. You know what I mean? Like, but then I'll never know the experience. So I'll never know the experience of being super thin. I'll never know the experience of being like bigger, right? Or how those people are treated and like all the, you know, negative comments and stuff that they get from it. But being over sexualized too is like there's no winning. Like no matter what stage your body is at, there's gonna be something wrong with it, or you're gonna be sexualized differently, or even like I know there's people who fetishize like like super skinny girls, you know, but there's people who fetishize like bigger girls, and there's just no winning. Like our bodies are used so much by other people, like that our bodies are literally just used, and that makes me feel so dirty because it's mine, you know, like it's like my sacred space where I take care of myself and I have my own emotions and like all of that. But just the fact that other people can perceive me in such a like negative light, it just feels so, I feel so vulnerable to that, you know? So it's like learning how to actually protect yourself in that, and knowing your worth and knowing that somebody else's perception of you isn't defining your body. Like it doesn't, they can think whatever they want, but at the end of the day, you know what the truth is, you know, like you know who you are is okay. It's more than okay, is way more than good enough. Like, you know, all your flaws you're trying to like point out, or all your flaws that you're focused on, like at the end of the day, they're just your body. Like they're still beautiful, you know?
Exactly. And I think that it's important, like the first step like that we're gonna leave you with is like really recognize why your body is important, how much it's done for you, why you're here today. It's walked for you, it's seen for you, it's done so much for you. So all like the least you could do is love it. The least you could do is that. And it's a more difficult process than like then it like it's easier to say, but it's like an ongoing process that we're gonna continuously learn. And even if you look different, like listen, if you've seen my Instagram, I have a birthmark on my arm, and that's like something I struggled with for so long, because I knew that the moment someone would see that, they wouldn't see like everything else of me, and it was such like a fear that I had. And now I'm like in such a better place with it, and I'm like I don't give a fuck. But like it took me like 20 plus years to get to that point. So it's definitely important, even if you look different, like find a space of why that uniqueness makes you so amazing. Yeah. It was great. Are there any closing comments you want to do?
No, I just want to thank you, you know, for this conversation. Very important, I think. And I think it was valuable and reflected, I think, a very crucial part of what women go through.
Yes. So, and head over. So plug your IG. Where can we find you?
So we're at The Naked. So it's like the and then NAK _D, all right, on Instagram.
It'll be linked below.
Yeah, you can find all my content, all the photos, all the videos, everything you need.
And we spoke about boundaries over there, so go ahead and check that out. That's also like a mini podcast, but it's more visual.
Yeah, on the IGTV.
On the IGTV. And yeah, if you enjoyed this conversation, let us know, tag us, put it on your story. We'd love to hear from you. And if you love this dynamic, tell us, because we feel like we want to do this more often. So
we do.
Yeah, maybe Clubhouse, maybe an IGTV. Let me know what you think about that. Don't be shy and tell us your experience with it, because everyone's experience is going to be unique. And I think that's the most important message we want to get across. Like we don't cover everything in 30 minutes time. So be kind to yourself. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you over at the 20verse and at her at The Naked IG. Thanks. Bye. If you loved what you heard today, go ahead and follow and subscribe the 20verse podcast. You can also follow me over at the 20verse, where I give you motivational posts, tips, and tricks, and keep you updated on this podcast every single week. Send it to your friends that are also in the 20verse. I'd love to hear their thoughts, and I'd love for them to join the family. Thank you so much for listening today, and I'll talk to you next week.